All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something I think pretty much everyone listening can relate to, which is just this constant flood of information that we're all dealing with all the time.
Yeah,
It never seems to end.
it never stops.
We're bombarded with news opinions,
Right.
facts,
Right.
things that people are telling us are facts.
Exactly.
And it can get really hard to know, like, okay, what is actually true here?
Absolutely.
To try to help all of us navigate this, I think, really complicated and tricky world, we are going to be taking a deep dive into some excerpts from Coffee Talk with Gerson Torres
Okay.
and Garrity. He gave, I think, a really great breakdown of how we can all be a little bit more discerning about the information that we're consuming.
It's so important.
We're going to go through each of his 7 strategies to be a more discerning consumer of information.
7 steps to truth.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
So let's jump right into it.
Okay.
So the first one he talks about is verifying the source. And one thing that he says right off the bat that I thought was really interesting is that even some of these big publications that we think of as being, credible sources,
Right.
The big names,
Mm-hmm.
they can still have hidden biases.
Absolutely.
And that was something that I had never really thought about before.
Yeah, it's so easy to just see a familiar name and assume, okay, this is a reputable source, I can trust this.
Yeah.
But it's not always that simple, right?
Yeah.
Like, you really have to look beyond the name itself and think about who owns this publication? What are their affiliations? Are they connected to any particular political parties or industries or interest groups? Because those connections can absolutely influence what they choose to report on and how they present it.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
It's like if you were getting financial advice, right?
exactly.
You would probably want to know if that person was secretly being paid
Absolutely.
to promote a certain stock or something.
For sure.
So how would we actually go about verifying a source then?
Well, a lot of times you can just do a quick online search, Google the publication's name, look for their About Us section on their website, or you can also check out some of these independent watchdog groups that track media bias.
Yep.
There are some really good resources out there that can give you kind of an overview of, a publication's leanings and their overall credibility.
Okay, perfect. So we verified the source. What is step number 2?
All right, so step number 2 is all about getting multiple perspectives.
Okay.
So Gerson calls this cross-checking your information.
Mhm.
And basically the idea is that, you don't want to just rely on one single source for your news. You want to look at how different sources are covering the same story.
Okay.
And this is helpful for a couple of reasons. First of all, it can help you identify potential bias, right? So if you see that one source is presenting a very different angle or interpretation of events compared to other sources, that could be a sign that they're, maybe pushing a particular agenda, or they're not being entirely objective in their reporting.
So for example, if there was a protest that happened
Mm-hmm.
and let's say 5 news sources reported the same basic facts,
Right.
but one of them is adding in, accusations that aren't really backed up with evidence,
Exactly.
then that would be a sign that maybe,
That's a red flag.
yeah, that source is
Yeah.
maybe not as trustworthy as the other ones.
Absolutely. And the other reason why cross-checking is so important is that it helps you see where different perspectives converge, right? So if you have, multiple sources that are all reporting the same basic facts, even if they might have slightly different interpretations or emphasis, that gives you a much stronger sense of what actually happened.
Okay, so you're kind of looking for the core truth that everyone
Mhm.
agrees on.
Yep, find the common ground.
Okay, love it. All right, what about number 3?
All right, so strategy number 3, this one is all about going straight to the source.
Ooh.
So this is the idea of looking for primary sources.
Primary sources.
Yes. So instead of just reading, a news article about a scientific study, for example,
Mm-hmm.
try to find and read the original study itself.
So it's like getting the story straight from the horse's mouth
Exactly.
rather than,
Cut out the middleman.
rather than
Yeah.
someone's interpretation of what the horse said.
Exactly. Because, when you're relying on a secondary source, you're always getting someone else's filter on the information. Right?
Mhm.
They're summarizing, they're interpreting, they're maybe even leaving things out. So if you can go to the primary source, that gives you the unfiltered information.
So what would be some other examples of primary sources?
Well, it could be anything, really. It depends on what you're researching. But, it could be things like government reports, court transcripts, historical documents, eyewitness accounts, anything that's like the raw data, so to speak.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, so primary sources whenever possible.
whenever possible.
Okay, what about strategy number 4?
All right, so number 4, this one is all about being aware of your own emotional responses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because, Gerson points out that a lot of times biased news or, misleading information, it's designed to elicit strong emotions in us. Right.
Okay.
So they might use really inflammatory language or, really dramatic imagery to try to, get us riled up or to scare us or to make us angry.
Okay.
And the reason they do that is because when we're emotional, we're less likely to think critically,
Yeah, we're not thinking.
thinking clearly.
Exactly. So, it's really important to just be aware of your own emotional state as you're consuming information.
Mhm.
And if you find yourself getting really angry or really excited or, really scared, take a moment to step back and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is the information being presented in a way that's designed to manipulate my feelings?
Okay.
And if so, maybe take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. So, like, if you're reading a news article and the headline is like, you won't believe what happened next. That's like a red flag right there.
Totally.
That they're trying to, like,
Yeah.
get you emotionally invested, get you hooked, get you to click.
Even if the story itself is not even that interesting.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
how do we avoid getting sucked into that then?
Well, I think the first step is just awareness, right?
Okay.
Like, just being aware that this is a tactic that a lot of sources use. And then once you're aware of it, you can start to look for those emotional triggers,
Okay.
right? So pay attention to the language that's being used. Are they using a lot of strong adjectives or adverbs? Are they using a lot of exclamation points? Are they using all caps? These are all signs that they're trying to evoke a strong emotional response in you.
So it's almost like you're becoming a detective in a way
Exactly.
of your own emotions
Yeah.
and being like, wait a minute, why am I feeling this way?
That's right.
What is it about this information that is making me feel this way?
Yeah,
And is that a genuine response or am I being manipulated?
you got it.
Okay, I love that. All right, so we've talked about verifying sources, cross-checking, and primary sources, and paying attention to our emotions. Now let's talk about echo chambers.
Oh, yes, echo chambers.
I feel like this is something that is so prevalent today, especially with social media.
Absolutely, it's everywhere.
Can you explain kind of what echo chambers are and the dangers of them?
Sure. So an echo chamber is basically when you're surrounded by people who share your views
Okay.
and you're only exposed to information that confirms your existing beliefs. So it's like you're in this bubble
Right.
where everyone's just kind of repeating the same ideas and opinions back to each other, and you never really get exposed to any alternative viewpoints.
I'd almost like an intellectual safe space
Yeah, in a way.
where you're like, oh, everyone here agrees with me. This is so nice.
Right. It feels good.
But you're never really challenged to think critically.
Exactly. And that's the danger, right? Because when you're in an echo chamber, you can start to get a really distorted view of reality. You start to think that everyone agrees with you or that your views are the only valid views, and you become less open to considering different perspectives or even just acknowledging that other people might have legitimate reasons for thinking differently than you do.
And that's why it's so important to break out of those echo chambers
Absolutely.
and be willing to engage with
Yeah.
ideas that we might not agree with.
Exactly. And Gerson has some really good advice for how to do this. He says, make an effort to follow people from the other side on social media.
Okay.
So if you tend to follow people who share your political views, make an effort to also follow some people from the other side and just see what they're saying.
And don't just follow them.
Yeah.
Actually read what they're saying.
Actually engage with it.
Yeah.
And you might not agree with everything you read, but it can help you broaden your understanding and see the world through different lenses.
Yeah, and I think it can also help you understand, like, where those people are coming from,
Yes.
even if you still fundamentally disagree with their viewpoint.
Exactly, because a lot of times, when we're in our echo chambers, we tend to demonize the other side. We think of them as being, stupid or evil or whatever.
Right.
But when you actually start to engage with people who hold different views, you realize that they're just people.
Yeah.
They have their own reasons for believing what they believe, and they're not necessarily, bad people just because they disagree with you.
Yeah, totally. All right, that was a good one, I think. I know everyone listening has thought about that before.
At least once or twice.
Okay, what about strategy number 5?
All right, so number 5, this one is all about using fact-checking resources.
Okay, so he mentions a few specific websites like Media Bias Fact Check, factcheck.org, and Snopes.
Right.
Can you explain how those work and how we can use them?
Sure. So these websites are basically like truth detectives.
Okay.
So their whole job is to investigate claims that are made in the news or on social media and assess their accuracy. So they'll look at the evidence, they'll look at the sources, and they'll try to determine whether a claim is true, false, or somewhere in between.
So let's say there's like a viral meme going around on social media
Right.
and it's making some kind of claim.
Mm-hmm.
You could go to one of these websites
Exactly.
and they would tell you if it's true or not.
Exactly. And they'll usually provide you with sources and evidence so you can see for yourself, how they reached their conclusion.
Okay. That's really useful.
Yeah, it can be really helpful, especially in today's world where there's so much misinformation flying around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so easy to just share something without even thinking about whether it's true or not.
Right.
But these websites can really help us to be more careful
Absolutely.
about what we're spreading.
Yeah. Always a good idea to double check.
Okay, 2 more strategies to go.
All right, bring them on.
Strategy number 6.
This one is all about paying attention to tone and language.
Okay.
So, we talked earlier about how biased news often tries to evoke strong emotions in us.
Right.
And one of the ways they do that is through the language that they use.
Okay.
Right? So objective reporting, reporting that's trying to be fair and balanced, it tends to use neutral language.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to, sway you one way or the other. They're just trying to present the facts.
Okay.
But bias reporting, on the other hand, they'll often use really loaded language or really dramatic language to try to, push a particular agenda.
So for example,
if you see a headline that says, the shocking truth they don't want you to know.
right.
That's a pretty good sign that they're not being objective.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to...
They're trying to get you riled up.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
trying to get you to click.
So it's like learning to read between the lines in a way.
Exactly.
And paying attention to the specific words that they're choosing and the phrases. And asking yourself, is this language neutral or is it trying to persuade me of something?
That's right.
Okay, love that. All right, so we've gone through 6 of Gerson's strategies for being a more discerning consumer of information. What is his final strategy, number 7?
All right, so the 7th and final strategy, this one is kind of a reminder to just be skeptical.
Okay.
In today's world, we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to just accept everything we see and hear at face value.
Yeah.
But it's so important to question everything.
Okay.
Don't just believe something just because you saw it on social media or just because someone told you it's true.
Right.
Do your own research. Check the sources. Think critically about the information that you're consuming, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Okay, I love that. Be a skeptic.
Be a skeptic.
Question everything.
Question everything.
Excellent advice.
Yeah.
So there you have it. 7 powerful strategies from Gerson Corres for navigating the complex world of media and information and becoming a more discerning and informed citizen.
It's like having a superpower.
Yeah, it really is. Like we were saying at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like having a superpower. To be able to cut through all of the noise and figure out what is actually true.
And it's a superpower that anyone can develop.
Exactly.
It just takes a little bit of effort and a little bit of practice. But once you start to use these strategies, you'll be amazed at how much more easily you can navigate the world of information.
Yeah, and I think the more that we practice this, the better we'll all be at it.
Absolutely.
So next time you encounter a piece of news or information, try putting these strategies into practice and see how it changes your perspective.
Question everything. Analyze it. Decide for yourself what's real.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder that, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye, everyone.